Okay. So, just give it a minute, see if anybody joins while I get some things ready. I don't know if anybody's going to join. Eventually most people do though. I'm just painting up a Judge Dredd bust. So this is a 3D printed Judge Dredd bust. I didn't 3D print this, I just got this from a Comic Con. It was only like £5, so I couldn't really pass that up. So I'm going to be trying out my new airbrush as well on stream, which will be cool. I'm just setting my airbrush up now. I won't be a second, then I'll start painting and talking some more. I hope everyone's well who does join. The weather is extremely warm here in the UK. Like unbearably warm. Just kind of cooled down a little bit though. Just turn my airbrush on. That plugged in. It would help if my airbrush was plugged in. That's the one thing I forgot to do, was plug my bloody airbrush in. But yeah, I will be painting in a second. I should have set more things up before I started streaming. And that's just my airbrush kicking in. So yeah, I have this Judge Dredd bust. This was 3D printed. It's done in FDM, so you can see some of the line work and things as you do with FDM printing. I got it from a Comic Con for like £5, so I can pass that up. So I'm going to be trying out my new airbrush with this chap. I got this airbrush sent to me from Neo Echo, like a airbrushing company from China. They do like some really nice like knockoff airbrushes of like bigger brands. So yeah, they're worth checking out. This one costs about £40, and you get like different cup sizes as well with it. So it comes with like these huge cups as well, which you can put onto your airbrush, which I think's awesome. So if you're doing a lot of airbrushing or something bigger. And this airbrush as well, it comes with different nozzles and different like needle sizes, which is cool. So you can change it up depending on what you're airbrushing. So if you're airbrushing something bigger or smaller, or if you're batch painting some things. So it's my first time trying this out, so I don't know if it's going to go right or wrong or whatever. And if it does go wrong, we'll just resort to using a brush. So I have two paints here. Got Vallejo Dark Blue, and I've just added a bit of turquoise. So I'm going to airbrush over Judge Dredd. And yeah, I'm going to start, see if it works. Don't know if there's any air coming to it. Watch it by my luck and it won't work. Oh no, it is working now. Kicking in. Alright, is there anything coming out? I don't think anything's coming out, is it? Oh, very slightly it's coming out. Because it's a very fine airbrush. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I think this is one of the smaller needles on this airbrush, so that's why you're not seeing much difference. I'm just going to change up the colour. It's a bit too dark. I'm going to get a lighter blue. Just bear with me. just going to mix in a lighter blue colour with this. Going to mix in some Ultramarines blue from Citadel. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. It's the first time I'm using this airbrush. So the nozzle on it is a lot like, well, not the nozzle, the needle, and the nozzle is a lot smaller than I was expecting on the standard version of it. So it does come with different needles and different nozzles, so we have to kind of play it by ear with it. I might have to get different blue again, because that's all dried up. Because everything's going wrong with technical difficulties. It is typical of me. So I'm going to switch over to Witching Hour Blue and two thin coats instead. Just bear with me, we will get going. Hopefully we can see more of a difference with the colour change now. So I hope everyone is well. It's very warm here in the UK. But it's just started thunder and lightning a little bit, so, which is good, which means it'll cool down hopefully. Don't think it's working. Unless the airflow, I'm gone. Ah, bloody typical, isn't it? It doesn't want to work on the time that I'm live streaming with it. No, it's not working. Just bear with me where we have some technical difficulties. Typical. Anyway. So yeah, Judge Dredd bust. I really like Judge Dredd. It's one of my favourite comic book series. I really like 2000 AD and a lot of Warhammer, especially the original stuff, is based on 2000 AD. Especially, even now you can see it with like the Arbites and the sort of the prison guys. Well, not prison guys, detective guys. And it doesn't want to work still. Someone got a needle in it, yep. Ah. Bloody typical, isn't it? The one time I want to use the airbrush, I really should have tried this out before I decided on it. You know, this is why you should try things out before you live stream them. Because otherwise things like this can happen, where your airbrush doesn't work for the first time. Unless the paint isn't thin enough, I don't know. Otherwise I'm just going to resort to using a brush. Because it will piss me off, and I hate when things go wrong. Especially when I'm doing things like this. I'm impatient though. If it doesn't go right the first time, I get easily pissed off. No, it's just air coming out. Oh, it's a really good advertisement for this company. First time I use it, and it's not working. See, air's coming out, but there's no paint coming out. Well, there can't be a blockage because I've literally just got this airbrush, so I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with it. Anyway, I'm just going to switch to my brush because this is just going to be a massive pain in the ass. And I've advertised it that I'm live streaming, doing an airbrush. Unless the trigger's not in properly. That could be the problem. I just try and put the trigger back in. No, it's still spraying. I don't know why nothing's coming out. Yeah, it's not gonna work. Fucking typical that, isn't it? As soon as I want to live stream, the airbrush isn't working. I'm just gonna clean it and I'm just gonna resort to using a brush. ass, isn't it? Come on. It's cool for my neck now, no. Anyway, we'll just resort to using a brush because I can't be arsed. So, we'll just start using a brush because it's going to start pissing me off. So, yeah, we'll do the Judge Dredd bust. We'll just paint him up. I'll do the front. So, yeah. So basically, I've got a mixture of... Got this colour. And I have this, not that colour. Bloody hell, everything's going wrong today. I've got this Witching Hour blue from Tooth and Coats and dark blue from Vallejo. So I'm just gonna go over the main body. And I'm just gonna start painting that. So yeah, I really like Judge Dredd. I like 2000 AD comics. Although I kind of prefer the standalone stories where you can get like a all-in-one kind of story that concludes. One of my favourite ones is The Cursed Earth. So I don't know if anybody reads Judge Dredd, but there's a really infamous one called Cursed Earth, and it's about where Judge Dredd goes out into the Cursed Earth. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, in Judge Dredd, it's set in the future after like a nuclear wars happened, and there's these huge like hive cities like in Necromunda and Warhammer 40k. And within those hive sort of cities, they're like overpopulated, they're called like the mega cities. Anyway, outside the mega cities, you have these like wastelands called the Cursed Earth. And there's a lot of like raiders and mutants and lawless people are there. Anyway, for one reason or another, Judge Dredd goes into the Cursed Earth wastelands for this storyline with this prisoner. And then it gets more weird and elaborate from there. But the story was banned for a long time because there was a lot of issues with copyright law. And basically what happened was there's these gangs within it in part of the chapters and some of the other parts as well, where the gangs like worship materialism and big corporations, which is quite ironic, you know, now. Anyway, these corporations, there's these certain gangs which are based around fast food places like McDonald's and Burger King and places like that. And what happens is all these like rival gangs fight each other. So there's like a Burger King, and then there's like Ronald McDonald and people like that, and they're fighting each other in these gang wars, which is kind of funny. And if you ever hear any creaking, it's not my bones, it's the chair. But yeah, so these gangs are fighting each other within the wastelands, which Judge Dredd has to get through. I'm just getting another paint. That'll do. Donkey, that'll do. But what happened was they basically got banned from being reprinted because of copyright laws. So I'm just getting orc hide from Tooth and Coats here. And yeah, so he got banned for a very long time from reprinting because of copyright. But more recently, about 10, 12 years ago here in the UK, they made this new law called the parody laws. So it basically means that you can make something as long as it's considered satire and obviously not overly damaging to the IP. So they reprinted The Cursed Earth as like a graphic novel, you know, like a trade paperback. And yeah, I have the trade paperback of that. And it's really cool because it's signed as well from the artist who made it. I don't know if that colour's going to be right. Might be better to mix it with another colour. Just everything going wrong on stream today. I think that's a better colour. I thought it was going to be more this shade, but it's not. I'm going to do Orc Flesh. It's a contrast paint from Citadel. So I'm going to mix that in with that other colour. It's more of this type of green. But yeah, that story was allowed to continue and be reprinted under the new parody laws, which is really cool. Obviously, Judge Dredd was and is like a big satire on American corporations and consumerism. And you can see like a lot of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd influenced early 40k. I think that's really cool. There's another Judge Dredd story I like, and Judge Dredd isn't even in it, but the judges are in it, and it's a story called America. And that's a more recent one that came out, I think, in the 2000s. And it's about somebody who's a resident of the mega city called America. And it kind of details her life living in like the slums of the mega city. And then she does eventually become a judge herself. But it shows the darker side of the judges and how they unfairly go after like minorities and people with not a lot of money. And I think it's really good, and it's really poignant to show it from the different side, not just from the side of Judge Dredd, but from how corrupt the judges can be and how unfair they can be. Obviously, that's paralleled with like the American justice system and how much, you know, cops can have overreach with power. That's a really good story as well. I mean, a lot of the stories are kind of tongue-in-cheek, but there are some more serious stories as well. So yeah, I really like that story. And it's just called America. So you can get a copy of that or read it online. It's really, really good. Another comic series I like, which kind of has a similar flavour to Dredd, is Transmetropolitan. That's really good if you've read that or haven't. Or I haven't read it for a long time, but I'd recommend rereading it. And that's a really good sci-fi dystopian one. It's about this journalist called Spider Jerusalem. He's sort of based on Hunter S. Thompson, the... Hello, Sid. Thanks for joining me. I was originally going to be using an airbrush, you know, that new airbrush I got, but for some reason it's not working right out the box. Like the paint's not going through it, so I'll have to play around with that and try and fix it. She's kind of pissed me off. I should have tried it out beforehand, but by the time it came, I was trying to fix my 3D printer. The vat on it had like a hole in it, so I had to rechange the entire vat on my 3D printer. And if you're into 3D printing, especially the resin one, you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to redo the vat skin on your 3D printer. But yeah, I was just talking about Transmetropolitan comic book series. It's really good. It's about this journalist called Spider Jerusalem who's like based around Hunter S. Thompson. And within that, he like uncovers corruption and things going on in the city. It's good because it's very, very like tongue-in-cheek in the same way 2000 AD can be very tongue-in-cheek. And it kind of came to a natural conclusion, which I'm happy with, because there's so many stories, especially comedy ones, where they just go on like ad nauseum or have spin-offs and then get kind of boring. But at least that had an ending. And I think it would be a good show to have like a TV series of. I could really see it being made into a TV show. But so many things get made into TV shows now, which can be a bit frustrating. But in terms of shows at the moment, I'm going to start the one called Murderbot, if anybody's heard of that. It's about artificial intelligence, but that's supposed to be like a dark comedy, like very tongue-in-cheek, and I like tongue-in-cheek stuff and satirical stuff. I like things which are serious, but then have like a comedy kind of edge to them at the same time, so it's not as boring. And more true to life, because I think comedy is a healer. But yeah, that'll be a fun show to watch. I do like The Boys, the TV show. I read the comics before the show came out. And I do think the show's better, because obviously it takes more of a modern slant on it. But that's a really good show. The last season of that's coming out, I think, this year or next year. I'm looking forward to that. I've really, really enjoyed that. It's kind of funny how they say now, like, media literacy is dead. You know, people don't really get satire or allegory the same, which I can definitely see. You know, people like relating to Homelander rather than seeing him as a insecure piece of shit, which he is. I like the spin-off as well, the Gen V spin-off. If you've not seen that, that's really good. That's out at the university for like the superheroes in the Boys universe. That's getting a second season, I think, this year. So that's one to watch out for. I'm looking forward to the Superman movies. The new actor. I know a lot of people keep going on about Henry Cavill, but it's hard to say. I don't really rate him as an actor. He has the look and can carry off a character, but I don't really rate him as a really, really good actor. He just kind of looks the part, like a John Wayne type of thing. There's quite a few actors like that where they look the part and can sell a movie, but I don't really rate them as an actor. I know that's kind of blasphemous to say. Everyone's a Warhammer fans, but there we are. And I do hope he can bring Warhammer to the screen, and I hope he does some good stories. And if they do make any stories, I do hope they do multiple stories eventually, not just like the one storyline. And I hope it's not just about Space Marines. I kind of do hope they show some of the other stuff, like the Imperium and with the Imperial Guards and stuff. You know, show the gritty side of it. It'd be cool to get like a Necromunda show. I love Necromunda. Because obviously a lot of people focus on like the Space Marines and like the glorious fighting of them, and then kind of ignore the shitty side of the Imperium. At least one good thing is with the warm weather, things dry quicker, and it's a good time to be priming your miniatures if you use a raffle can. I think everyone loves Pedro Pascal though, and I do think he's a good actor. At least he plays different roles, not just superhero romance roles. He's played in different things. And I do like the hype with him. I usually don't get the hype with celebrities and stuff, but he seems like a nice guy. And he's someone who's got more famous as he's got older, which I've seen happen quite a bit lately with actors. They tend to, there's some, especially character actors, who tend to get more famous as they get older. Or it's just like one or two roles which really propel them into the zeitgeist. I've seen that with Walton Goggins as well. He plays the ghoul in Fallout. I can sand it down, or I can like fill it in, because this is FDM printed, so I haven't actually printed this. This is one that I just bought from a Comic-Con for like £5, so I wasn't as bothered about it. Whereas if I printed this myself, I'd probably sand it down or do it in resin, so it would be a lot smoother. So hopefully the paint will cover it. If not, I'm not too bothered, to be honest. I'm not one of these people who gets overly bothered about things like that. It's an alright print. It's not the best of prints, but you know, ideally it should be sanded down. But honestly, I'm not too bothered. I just want to paint it up. It's been sat on my pile of shame for a long time, so I just wanted to get it painted up. But this particular Judge Dredd bust you can find it a lot on the internet for free, the file, if you want to print it yourself. If you just type in Judge Dredd bust, this is like one of the first things that pops up. I'm considering, because I wanted to print this myself a while ago, and then I just saw this bust on a stall and they were selling it cheap, so I was like, I'll get it and paint it up. But yeah, you can get the file pretty cheap, or for free online, and I'll probably do it again in resin and hollow it out, or make a smaller version and paint that up. It's just because as well, because I've got my big hobby light above it, that's why it's so prominent as well. So I've just got royal gold from Darkstar. I know I should have really sanded it down, but like I said, I was in a bit of a rush with this video. I've got a million and one things going on today, and then the airbrush wasn't working, so I really just wanted to get some paint on it. So yeah, I've got royal gold from Darkstar Molten Metals. It's one of the nicest golds, if not my favourite gold to work with. And if you've never used Darkstar before, get some. They definitely do the best metallic paints, and that's because they sent me the whole range out, and I'm technically a sponsored artist, but at the same time, they do some of the best, if not the best metallics out there. They cover really well, and they have like a massive range of different colours. They have like verdigris ones, and then they have like coloured metallics, but the golds and silvers are amazing. They cover really, really well, especially over black, or if you dry brush them. So I just move it a bit, so you can see all the details. Move that leaf away. But yeah, metallic paints, like Citadel ones, aren't that great. The Retributor gold's quite nice, but overall, not really a huge fan of the metallics. Turbo Dock do some really, really nice metallics. They're an American-based company. The only problem I have with Turbo Dock is they use a lot of like a mixture with it, and the mixture is so the pigments stay together, because a lot of the time with golds and silvers, metallic paints, they tend to separate more because they have metallic flakes in them. So it's hard for them to be opaque. So usually they are mixed with a lot of like thinning mediums or like a medium to bind them together. But the problem with the Turbo Dock ones, over time, if you don't shake them up, that separates, and then they can be a bit of a ball ache to get back together. But they have like a lot of interesting shifting paints. So paints with like multicolours on them, or to give different effects. They're nice paints to work with. But I think Darkstar are like the best metallics in my opinion. And no, they don't pay me to say that. They just sent me a set of paints out once, and I was really impressed by them. So I just use those now. But I do have a lot of different paints. I collect paints like Pokemon cards. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've been sent quite a lot of review paints over the years, like full sets. And I do buy quite a lot of paints. If I go to a hobby shop and they have like a range of paints I've never tried before, or a shade, I go, oh, get one of those. So like I went to Element Games once and they had Chimera paints, so I got some of those. And they're like really thick acrylic paints, and they're more for like busts and fancy things. And they're really like intense pigmented, like really very coloured, almost like oils. They're really nice. And I also have it's another brand similar. Scale 75 have a similar range called Artist Colours. And I think that AK Interactive are starting to make more of an artsy brand of paints, that come in the art tubes. The only problem with those types of paints is that they're in them type of tubes, so they tend to dry up more and a bit more of a pain in the backside to get on your palette. And also, I wouldn't say they're designed for the average miniature painter. They're more if you're painting something fancy or doing a bust or a diorama, because they're very thick paints and very pigmented, so you have to thin them down quite a bit. But if you're working quite a lot on the same miniature over time, they are worth sort of getting. And you can like do a lot of technical things with them, and glazes and washes and things like that. But my go-to paints at the moment, I use a lot of AK Interactive paints. I like their range, and the paints aren't too thick. And I also like the fact that the paints aren't given like weird fantasy names. They basically tell you on the bottle what the shade of paint is, so you know what you're getting. So they're like very practical with the way that they have their paints. And I really like their stuff. But it's always worth if you go to a hobby shop, or if you're ordering something online and maybe you need to add an extra £3 for 3 delivery or whatever, just get a random paint from a brand you've never used before. And it's not like you have to completely rechange the paints you use. You can just like choose what you want to work with. Because the more you experiment in this hobby, like the better you get, the more enjoyment you get. Because I think a lot of the time people in this hobby kind of get stuck in their ways, or stuck in the way of following YouTubers or tutorials, instead of like playing around with things and having a bit more fun and freedom with the way that they paint themselves. But I've always kind of been of that mindset, because I've been in the hobby for like 20 years, well 22 years, and I've always been into arty stuff and painting stuff. So I never really, learned directly from YouTubers. I like the new wave of painters. And there weren't really as many tutorials back then. You mainly get them in White Dwarfs or the occasional like Citadel how to paint. So you kind of had to do a bit more guesswork. And then I learned a lot from like scale model painters, so more traditional scale model painters, like the World War kind of diorama people, and the people who do things like that. And also from like more traditional art. So I've always kind of been into art and drawing, so I learned quite a bit from that. And I always have like the ethos of John Blanche, who always kind of says like, just paint things, there's no right or wrong way of painting things. Which I think a lot of the time in this modern setting, a lot of people kind of get stuck in this way of having to paint in a particular way, or a certain way. Which I think is fine, if you want to paint in a particular way or a certain way, that's alright. But I personally think there's more enjoyment in the hobby when you play around with things a lot more and you're not afraid for things to go wrong or look crap. You don't learn, and you don't subjectively get better unless you try different things out and different techniques out and things like that. Because I see so many people now like on Instagram, and they feel like these very false kind of premises of, they've got this picture of a desk and everything's like perfectly neat. Oh, it's perfectly neat artist opus brushes and all this perfectly neat paints in a rack, and I'm just like, in a rack, not Iraq, by the way. And I just kind of think like back to Francis Bacon, the artist, and seeing his workshop, and it's so chaotic and things are just everywhere, and that's how I feel more as a painter, Organized chaos. That's kind of always been my ethos with painting. Just try it out, see if it works. Have that mixture of techniques, but also of personal preference, and take things from real world and other art as well, and apply it to your miniature painting. Because all the techniques within miniature painting come from the wider world of art. And some of the best miniature painters, well, especially like the people who won Golden Demons, especially like in the early 2000s, like a lot of the people who painted up miniatures and won awards back then came from different art backgrounds. So Victoria Lamb was a set designer for theatre, so she knew about light placement and composition. And then there's other people, like the Spanish painters, were inspired by concept artists like Franz Francetta and people like that, and they take a lot of inspiration from their work with lights placed and colour and things like that, composition. Because a lot of people, obviously, with the Duncan Rhodes, and then you get the meme of people telling you to thin your paints, and you're like, well, how and why should I do it? So that gold's come out really nice. As I said, it's a really, really nice gold. You can get really nice consistency after like 2 coats, even 1 coat if you're in a rush. And I personally like painting up different things. I don't know if that's the new or divergent thing with me, but I like painting up Warhammer, but I like painting up busts like this, and I like painting up dioramas and vignettes and different things, you know, just to change it up and have some fun. And sometimes it's good to change things up and then paint things for fun sometimes, and then sometimes paint things where you're trying to push yourself a bit more. As long as you're painting and creating stuff, you'll continuously improve and enjoy what you're doing. I'm just going to grab a silver now. And I kind of feel like a Bob Ross saying things like this, but I do like talking all these videos, so they're not just me painting. And I do like to waffle and talk about different subjects, which I'm passionate about. But I'm really happy that artists like Roman Lepat and people like that are becoming more prominent in the hobby. It just shows you can be more artsy-fartsy with like Warhammer. You know, he does all these like miniatures and shadow boxes and frames and stuff, and these really cool dioramas. And the way he paints is more painterly. You know, he's not afraid of showing textures and brush strokes and things like that. I've got Pewter from Darkstar. This is a like a really nice silvery kind of blue color. So I'm just gonna get his zipper. Probably not the best brush in the world to use, but here we are. And if I always listened to what people said in terms of art all the time, I wouldn't be where I am. You know, I wouldn't have as many followers as I do on Instagram. I wouldn't have the collaborations that I do. I've always been wanting to do what I want to do with art. I think that's always important, to do what you want to do. I'm just getting another paint there. Because too often you get like unsolicited feedback and stuff like that. So I've got beige red from AK. I really like this colour. It's like a pinky flesh tone. Kind of like a Cadian flesh, I guess. I'm just going to dry brush this over the face. But yeah, there's so many times where there'll be somebody that has to complain or has something negative to say about what you've painted. And the thing is, at the end of the day, as long as you've painted something, you've been creative, you can call yourself an artist. Because everyone has the capacity to create art. The face is really nice. It's a really nice sculpt, I do have to say. Obviously, it's a little bit hindered from the fact it was printed in an FDM printer, and probably not to the best quality. There is some lines on it, but it still looks pretty cool for what it is. Like I said, it'd be cool to print my own version of this in resin. And a lot of the time, the people that give you solicited feedback are usually faceless accounts, people that don't actually show their miniatures or make videos or anything like that. And if they do have miniatures, 9 times out of 10, they're not that great, or the composition of the photos is terrible, and they're like taken with no lighting, with a potato camera, with the camera covered in Vaseline, as I always like to joke. These types of people aren't that good at painting themselves. And you'll never get like bad feedback. Well, you'll never get unsolicited feedback from like professional painters. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting feedback and talking about techniques and how you can push your miniature, but that depends on the environment. You know, if you have painting lessons with someone or you go to a painting class and then they give you feedback, at least that's productive. Or you ask your friends how you could improve this. Otherwise, it's just farting in the wind. It just doesn't really do anyone any good. Well, that's the thing when you start to create things and you post things, especially when you post things online, you'll always get critics and assholes telling you what to do and how to paint your miniatures. And I say F them, because I'm still here. I still paint. I've continuously tried different things and improved. And if I always painted the way everyone else wanted to paint, then I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't be painted as many miniatures as I have. But sometimes you don't want to spend hundreds of hours painting the same bloody miniature over and over again. Sometimes you just want to paint something for fun like this. So I've got warrior skin from the army painter. Don't have that many army painter paints. The main ones I have are the speed paints. I did have the original army painter ones. Personally didn't really rate the original army painter paints. I found them too thin. But the newer range is supposed to get better, like the war paints, or what they're called, war fanatic paints. They're supposed to be pretty good. So I've just thinned that paint down. I'm gonna wash it over the gold. So the thing is, a flesh tone always looks really good over gold. So like a Raglan flesh wash or something like that. And it just makes the gold look a bit richer rather than just using an Agrax wash or a non-oil. And to anyone who's joined under the premise I was going to use an airbrush, my airbrush isn't working. 3 out of 3 airbrushes aren't working. In typical. Like I said, I should have probably tried it out beforehand, but didn't do. We're on for time. Another 10 minutes or so. Yeah, lots of technical difficulties today. This is why you should probably pre-do a lot of things that you do. But that's life. I'm hoping to get some paints from the Army Painter. I've emailed them about getting the John Blanche paints to use on a project. Whether or not they'll get back to me. But I've talked about this before. If you're someone who creates content online, posts pictures, and maybe you have a couple of 1,000 followers, it's always worth just emailing around at companies. They can always just say no. Because I do that. I email quite a few companies. Some approach me, but quite a few of them I just email and hope for the best. And usually they do respond. And some companies are better than others. It really does depend on the marketing person that you speak to, and usually it's just like one person. And if they're alright, then they're alright, or they don't like you for other reasons. But one of the best ones is Modifidius Entertainment. They're the guys who do the Fallout miniatures, and the marketing people are really, really nice. They're always really responsive. And they always email me, do you want to try out these new miniatures? Or we've got this event coming up at UK Games Expo or whatever. Do you want to come along or help out or whatever? And you just think, oh, it's cool because they're actually interacting and want to talk to you. Some other companies I can't even get in touch with, like Games Workshop. I've never been able to get in touch with anyone about the creator program. I know the person who does the creator program. I know some people who are on the creator program, and I've even got somebody I know who works within Games Workshop to forward my email, but I've never heard anything back. And whether or not that's because it just gets lost because there's so many people contacting them about that, or they really just don't want to associate themselves with me, which is fair enough. It'd just be nice to get some sort of email than complete radio static or anything like that. And in one way, I'm not too bothered that Games Workshop haven't sent me miniatures because I've got enough Warhammer miniatures myself to paint up. And I've got these other companies who send me stuff anyway, like Modifidius are really good, like I said. And they've sent me out Fallout miniatures before, Mass Effect ones, And they've sent me out a new game. It's called Mega Wars, and that's like a 6mm tank sci-fi game. So I'm gonna do some content about that. It'll be fun to paint up something tiny. Like I said, variations are always key with this hobby. Try out different things. I'm gonna 3D print some tiny terrain for that as well. Small buildings. Try that out. The rules for that are free at the moment, actually, as well. The Mega Wars, the quick play rules are free at the moment. But that's going to be a Kickstarter that's coming out, I think, next month. So that should be cool. I'm just going to use the airbrush a second. Do I? I might as well just start on that. Just be 1 second. Or shall I do the helmet? No, I'll do the helmet first. Like the airbrush I got that doesn't work, that was from a Chinese company. I know China kind of gets a bad rap, but yeah, the companies are really nice to work with. I'm just getting red now, red paint. Ironically, it's called Dread Red. I'm gonna mix that with like a lighter red. But yeah, Chinese companies tend to be really nice. I've worked with quite a few different ones, especially like airbrushing and 3D printing ones. And if you're into 3D printing, it's worth contacting companies, especially smaller companies. There's some really good ones out there. Usually they're willing to send like resin to people. I know some people with smaller accounts who get free resin. And I don't gatekeep that sort of thing. I do tell people when I'm like, oh, this company, contact them or recommend people to them. Because I can't stand when people gatekeep this hobby, you know, especially people that get free stuff or creator program stuff. I'm always like, I'd rather tell you who had contacted or emailed me to get these review copy things. But like I said, with the Games Workshop thing, like, no, like, some people have tried to help me into to contact. I might as well just go to an event and find the person because I know who it is, who's part of the creator program. I'd be like, why aren't you giving me free shit? But no, I've got enough stuff to always be making content with. Just feel like everyone kind of relies on Games Workshop products to try and sell their content. If you don't sit the name Warhammer in your video, even if it's not about Warhammer, people are afraid like the algorithm won't like it and nobody will see your video. It's always funny to me. I think then creators back themselves into a corner of constantly having to do Games Workshop stuff. And that kind of what happened with Miniac. He kind of goofed it up because he negated his NDA with Games Workshop when he posted that picture of the Horus Heresy tank from a Warhammer World event. And then his kind of platform like plateaued for a bit because he was overly bothered about that. And like he wasn't making Warhammer content, but now he's kind of improved that again because I feel like he's kind of gone back to more of his roots rather than the influencer approach. He's actually doing these interesting videos where he's like showing people how to paint again. Like he's got this video series where he gets like more beginners and shows them how to paint and like sits next to them as like a teacher. And I prefer stuff like that. and those seem to be doing well for him. As I always say, integrity leads to longevity, and I think if you're more true to yourself, you'll last longer and gradually build up an audience and a community, rather than feeling like the need to back yourself into a corner and only make certain content or paint certain things because it seems popular. And it seems boring because then everyone else is doing the same bloody thing. It's like when the slap chop thing came out and everyone was making a video about slap chop, and it was just mind-numbing. And so that technique hasn't been around for a lot longer than that in miniature painting. It was just called underpainting then. And even that technique is from canvas painting. So many times, like within this hobby, I've said this before, like there's so many techniques, all the techniques come from classical painting. Like source lighting and dry brushing and things like that. Blending, wet blending and stippling. Stippling's the big one at the moment, especially professional painters. They're all gung-ho and frothing at the mouth for stippling. Alright, I'll just paint this for a little bit longer. And then I'm gonna leave it there. So just still painting up my Judge Dredd bust. Still a bit pissed off the fact my new airbrush isn't working. So I was going to originally airbrush this, but we're just resorting to the good old brush so we can keep the live stream going. It just proves to me I really should organise these live streams better beforehand, but I'm new to making them. I don't really live stream that often, but I'm trying to do more live streams. I'm gonna start doing some more live streams, probably an hour at night. Be nice to do them a bit earlier. I'll do some in the day as well, where I can. I'll just do a little bit more on this and call it quits, and then go play some Gears of War, which I probably should have done in the first bloody place. Not been a successful stream, but then again, you just have to keep going, because consistency. Oh, there's my airbrush. It's laughing at me because, well, my airbrush, I need to sort that out. It's really pissed me off. But yeah, sometimes things go wrong, or you don't get the viewers you want. But that's part of the pain of creating things. You just have to keep going with consistency, even though things might go wrong. That is life. Anyway, I might call it quits there because I've done nearly an hour and it's absolutely bloody roasting here in the UK. Even though it's thunderstorming, I think soon. Hopefully it'll cool it down a little bit. I think it looks pretty good with what I've done. Finished off my Judge Dredd bust nearly. Try and get the airbrush working for the next stream. Thank you for everyone that's joined. Remember to enjoy hobbies for yourself. And at the end of the day, they're just war dollies. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next video.